Okay, today we're starting with the new topic, that is events. Now, event basically start of selection. When we write start of selection in any code, that is an event. Event is basically you trigger uh, a block, because start and end of selection is a block, and between this you write the code logic. So every ABAP program is encapsulated between events. Events can be like to calculate or retrieve any value like material number, production order number, or build a report. Even a report is also triggered. Report itself is an event. So between an event, you write the code. Okay. Start of selection is your syntax, and end of selection is your syntax. Okay. So in between this, we write our code. So starting with our usual logic, data, work area, mac, type, mac is a table. Parameters, p matner, type, matner is material number. Select single star, that is single record, but every record from MAK18 to work area mac, where matner equals p matner. So we are referencing p matner to get the record that matches with MAKT using material number. So if in MAKT there is a material number that matches with the parameter matner, it will bring into and load into WMAT. Okay. So activate. Okay. Direct processing. P matner. Let's say what we have is this. Execute. Okay. Now it is what it is writing. It is writing WMACT. It has all this details. LAP9FG, LAP9FG. Okay, now let's change our code a little bit. So MAKT is bringing anything that matches what it is written over here and brings all the records. So now what we do here, instead of writing this, we write this, but over here we write LAP9FG. For example, we are hard coding it. Okay. But the default will be LAP9FG. LAP9FG. So you can see that. Okay. So anything you can also search for chassis, and that is the description is already given over here. Okay. Easy. Now let's change a little bit of our code again. So use case is user wants to see default value. Default value is this. So we use the default keyword. Default is the keyword here. Okay. Now we will also write pdate type. Let's okay. Why are we entering this pdate? Because I'm also writing notes so that it is easy for you to understand. Okay. Okay. So the use case we want to show is the today's date. Tomorrow it should show tomorrow's date. So that's why we're taking system date. So p date type um system date. Okay, system date. Default cannot be used as it is static, because default will actually it can be old date if we make it static. So system is creating a data object p date and storing a value, and this data object is also pulling value input from the user. So since it is an input, it will come over here instead of there. Okay. Okay. Activate. Okay. We have system date, but we want to default it as well. Okay. So it's not actually showing. So what do we do? Just a second. It doesn't show the date at selection screen as selection screen executed before the date is defaulted. Okay. So system execute events with selection screen. Okay, it can be viewed on the overview in breakpoint. System has events that are systems process that cannot be forced. We have to place the code in a way it can show the events processing our code. Various events can be executed. Okay, so various events can be executed simultaneously in synchronized manner, and it can be interlinked. Events can be interlinked as well, and that's why, because it has already defaulted this value. Okay, it doesn't show the date at selection screen, as selection screen is executed before the date is defaulted. Okay, so when we actually see parameters, it direct processing. So since the selection screen is already triggered, that's why it is not defaulted over here. Okay. Okay. Now let's put in at selection screen output. Okay. And let's change this. P date is equal to psi datum, but why is it not picking up? To do type psi datum. Yes. Start of selection. Okay. At selection screen output parameters, and now let's see how it fires this event. Start of selection. This selection screen output means what screen that you will actually see of the selection event, and then it will start the selection event. It is not starting at over here, but starting over here. Select single from MAKT into where matna is P matna, write MAKT. Activate. So events is a very easy concept. Okay, it wants end of selection. Parameters cannot be defined locally from form routine. Okay. Parameters, datum. Okay, let me do one thing. Selection screen output, activate. Still, it is not defaulting it. Okay. Okay. Let's solve this. What is actually happening over here? At selection screen output, shows the screen before event is executed but triggered, used to validate some data. Now, when it is triggered, it is not fired yet, but it is triggered, still not fired, still not initiated. It is used to validate some data. Now, what is used to validate some data? Now, data, of course, data in the screens, in the fields, is it correct or not? Is it in right format or not? That is what it has to display. Like, for example, let's activate this. Direct processing. Okay, since it is triggered, but still it is not executed. But why it is triggered? Because it wants to see whether the entries made over here will be whether the data type like character, integer are correctly loaded or not. That's why it is triggered, but not yet fired. Okay, at selection screen, if this is used only, it will only trigger the at selection screen. At selection screen. If this is used only, it will only trigger the value fields after the selection screen is shown. What you're seeing, you are actually seeing the selection screen. Whatever screen is generated using parameters screen options is selection screen. Whatever screen is generated using parameters of screen options is selection screen. So what we're actually seeing is a selection screen. Any screen generated using write statement is list screen. So whatever we actually write is a list screen. Typically three types of screens: list, screen, normal. The order in which you write the code has no relevancy to the events. Okay. Okay. Now next is we actually change a little bit of our code. At selection screen, start of selection, at selection screen output. Now, since this is also an event and this is also an event, so it doesn't matter whether the relevancy, the order, okay, the order in which you write. So this is an option. We've already given this, so it will be duplicate. Okay. P date is equal to side date. P date is equal to type side item. Activate. P date is unknown. Okay. It's not a correct similar statement is update. It's not update. Field period is unknown 29th. Okay. All right. WMAT at selection screen output period side data. Okay, let's do one thing. Period is unknown. Very strange. Okay. Selection screen output period side data. At selection screen side data. Period is equal to side datum. Period is equal to side datum. Side datum. Wait period. Period. Period is not declared as a table projection or data history and evaluation. It does not exist in active version. Type side datum. Oh, okay. Period. Activate anyway. Edit. Date. Side datum. At selection screen output. Pdate side item. Okay. Selection screen output. Start of selection. WMAT. Very strange. I don't know why. Let's try another code. I don't know what this error is coming. Anyways. ZT53 events 25th of Jan executable. Okay, data WMAC type MAC parameters pmatner default. Default can be anything. Period type side item at line selection. Now this is basically your list event line selection. We are calling a transaction. Now this is a keyword for calling the transaction MM03. Okay. Select single record from MACT single and all of the data from MACT into WMACT where MACT is using pmatner, right? WMACT. At selection screen output, pdate side data. Activate. It's same thing, but it's not working in the last program. Anyways, so we have the default date. It's working over here. It was the same code in the last one as well. Okay, but it was not working. But anyways, it has worked over here. So moving forward, every single line of code will belong to an event. Okay, if no event is defined explicitly, it will keep the code under start of selection. So by default, all of your code, even if you don't explicitly define or mention start of selection, it is by default understood it is under start of selection. So selection is basically your first screen that will be triggered. Okay, that's how ABAP actually works. Okay, moving forward. ZT53 events 25th of Jan executable. Data WMAC type MACT parameters pmatner type matner default 100 p date side item pmatner is 100. Start of selection, select single from M18 to WMAC where matner is equal to pmatner. Okay. Okay. Start of selection, select single record all of the data into WMAC where matner is equal to pmatner. And if I remove this, for example, okay, select single and let's see if it is working. Check. Okay, no syntax errors. MAKT. Activate. Direct processing. Okay, pdate is not defaulted because screen output was not fired. Okay, that selection screen output. Less start of selection. Pdatum, side atom. Okay, check, because now we have changed the order. First this was coming at the last, now it's coming at in the middle. Activate. We have defaulted it. Okay. Now, next event at line selection, call transaction MM03. P-matter 100 is not there. So it will execute because it is creating and triggering that event, list event of MM03. So that's why it's not showing. Right, WMAC. We have already written that, but it is triggering another event at line selection called transaction MM03. So it is basically triggering this. Okay. So let me just 1 minute. We have so the runtime environment that we have seen that is actually running in real time. Okay, the runtime environment represents the highest controlling instance for an ABAP. What we are actually executing over here is runtime environment. We are changing the order of the code, and it actually acknowledges that. So no ABAP program can run without it. It is responsible for the flow control of dialog sequences and takes care of the communication with the SAP system database. Now, the system basically, when it encounters any code like this one, without any regard whether it is mentioned before start of selection or after the start of selection or any other event, doesn't matter, because the environment, the runtime environment is intelligent enough to execute this as per the logic of the runtime environment. Okay, so the program structure is basically is that we declare data types, and through the selections, of course, we actually tell them what to do with that data types, and we call we are making a call over here at line selection. We are calling a transaction, and we are actually telling it to list, to give it to trigger it as a list event, because we want to actually see In MM03, the data, the master data of that very material, that is the list event. And of course, the sequence, as I've already told you, the sequence doesn't matter in ABAP code. In some areas, of course, it does matter when you are actually defining your data types. Of course, there is sequence when you are defining structures. Sequence is required over there. The ending, of course, because the ending over here is triggering another selection, although the order is not required, but what we actually wanted to see is the end output with the right statement. Okay. And that's why we actually write keywords, and that actually makes a processing or an executable statement. Okay. Each program consists of global declaration by a number of processing blocks. The global objects are mainly data declaration like structures that are visible in all processing blocks of the ABAP program. In some processing blocks, local data can be declared that can be viewed locally. So some data types like pmatner is local, but um, some structures can be made global, or the messaging that we use is global, the messaging that we saw in the last one. Processing blocks are indivisible syntax units. A processing block cannot include another processing block. So one start statement is different from the another start of selection block. They're called by either the runtime environment or by specific statements in other processing blocks you like include. When the first processing block is called, the entire program is loaded into the memory. First processing block is start of selection. Okay. Okay. So this is where it actually triggers, and then triggers this selection screen. And the selection screen output is the first screen that you see when this is actually triggered. So that's how it actually runs. Okay. Call. This simply means how processing blocks are called. So first, selection is started, it's triggered, and an output is actually shown. If no processing blocks are used, the whole program is considered to be under processing block of start of selection is called by the runtime environment by default. The order of processing blocks in the programming code is totally irrelevant to the sequence in which they are executed. Only the code in a processing block is executed sequentially. When the execution processing block is finished, control is returned to its caller. Okay. So we are actually calling a transaction over here. So the next execution will be done from here. Okay. The execution of processing block can be ended in one of two ways. It can either end with the last statement of the processing block has been executed by using check or exit statements. We'll see checks and exit statements. On each termination, control is returned to the caller of the processing block. However, it should be noted that within loops, check and exit affect only the current loop processing. So the loops actually, within a loop, it's already a processing block. Check and exit will actually affect that loop only. In the latest version, there is a statement return which will always quit the processing block independent of the context, whether the execution has been done or not. Okay. Events 25th Jan executable. I hope events is clear to you, Azam.
जी सर, एक्चुअली ना डिस्कनेक्ट हो जाता है वो लाइट की वजह से ना, अभी लाइट चली गई थी
Okay,
सुबह।
okay.